In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to embed quotations that you've selected for your claim analysis paragraph into a sentence. We want to avoid what Ms. Anderson and I called quote plopping. The first step is to select the quotation from the text that you're going to use to support your claim. I'm using a selection from Fear here. Here's the text that we could be using. Fear. Zoe hates his fear. He forces himself to his feet and walks, almost in a trance, toward the back door of his house. He stands at the door, tears rolling down his face as he reaches his hand toward the bolt lock, ready to twist it open. His fingers touch the metal. It's cold. In the grip of his terror, he can't think of anything else to do. In another second, he could turn the lock and these intruders would come in. Zoe feels such shame at his cowardice. He knows he's a coward. He pauses and tries to catch a breath. Thinking about his shame, he realizes and flashes in an instant, I'd rather be dead than this afraid. Your next step is to figure out which of those words you're actually going to use. You need to pare down your quote to the essentials. Select a word or several words, some phrases, maybe even one whole sentence from that quotation that carry significant ideas. If there's something that you don't need to include, you can use ellipses or those ... to leave out less important words and still keep this grammatical structure of your sentence. Let's say that we wanted to talk about Zoe giving in to the burglar's demands. We could go up to our original text and see this sentence. He stands at the door, tears rolling down his face as he reaches his hand toward the bolt lock, ready to twist it open. We might, though, want to leave out the part about the tears rolling down his face, because really we're focused on the fact that he's going to open the door. I could decide just to use the part of the quotation that's in blue and leave out the green part. Down here, I'm going to type the part that's in blue. I'm going to use ... or an ellipsis for the green part, and then I'm going to continue with the rest of the sentence as it is in my original text. The next part is the key part, the embedding the quotation into your own sentence. There are 4 ways of doing this, and we're going to go over those in just a minute. But the key is that you can't plop a whole quoted sentence on its own into your claim paragraph. Look at this sentence. This is not acceptable. It's what we call wall-to-wall quotation. The sentence begins with the quotation mark, the sentence ends, and then there's a quotation mark. There's nothing besides the quote in this sentence. That's quote plopping. It's just sitting here, standing alone in the middle of the paragraph. What you can do is have a few words of your own and then the quotation. Or you can have the quotation followed by words of your own, but there has to be your own words and the quoted words in the sentence for it to be an acceptable embedded quotation. Finally, you do need to include a page citation in parentheses after the evidence. We are using the Modern Language Association or MLA format, and these are their rules. The punctuation for your sentence goes after the page citation in parentheses. That's weird, it's just true. There's an exception if your quote ends in a quote, question mark or an exclamation point. You leave that in the quotation and you put a period at the end of the sentence after the page number in parentheses. Also, the very first time that you quote a text, you put the author's last name and the numeral of the page in parentheses. I did this on my original text, Truman 3. However, every time after that, you just put the numeral in parentheses. Also, the first time that you use the author's name, there is no comma between the author's name and the numeral in the MLA format. There are other formats like the American Psychological Association format used in social sciences, and some of them do have a comma there, but not for language arts papers. Also, there's no word page or abbreviation PG. There's just the numeral of the page in the parentheses. Okay, let's look at the 4 ways you can embed quotes. The first two ways work best when you're using a whole sentence from the original text. The first way is to add a quotation that's a complete sentence within your own sentence by using an introducer sentence followed by a colon and then the quoted sentence. This works when you make the introducer a short summary of the quotation or sometimes a reason or explanation for the quotation. Here's an example. We know that Zoe is ashamed of his cowardice. Now, this is essentially a paraphrase of this. Here it said Zoe feels such shame at his cowardice, he knows he's a coward. I've changed it to say Zoe is ashamed of his cowardice. So I've paraphrased part of the text in a sentence. Then I have a colon instead of a period. And I have the full text sentence from the text. I'd rather be dead than this afraid, which is down here, the last line of our text. And it's in quotation marks. It is a sentence and should have a period at the end of afraid, but because we have the citation afterwards, the period goes after the citation. Another way to do this same thing is to have an introducer phrase that is then followed by either a dialogue tag or a thinking tag. So something like Zoe thinks, or Zoe says, or Zoe ponders, or Zoe questions, or Zoe asks. If you can put that in front of the quote, then you can use this method. After that tag, you need a comma, and then the full sentence quotation in quotation marks. Of course, it starts with a capital letter because it's a full sentence. In this case, I is always capitalized, but that would be a capital letter because it's a full sentence too. Here I also have another part of an introducer. As he sits frozen in fear, comma, Zoe thinks, comma, I'd rather be dead than this afraid. I could take out this part, as he sits frozen in fear. I could also just say, Zoe thinks, comma, I'd rather be dead than this afraid. The third method is to use an introducer that ends in the word that, followed by the quotation. In this case, the quotation may not be a full sentence. It doesn't need to be. It can be, though. And it can't start with a capital letter. If in the text it does start with a capital letter, you'll need to change the capitalization by putting a lowercase letter in square brackets to replace the capital letter. So here's an example. As he sat frozen in fear, Zoe thinks that he is a coward. You'll notice that in this case, you could read it without knowing that there's quotes there, and it just sounds like a normal sentence. When you have that there, it's hard to tell without seeing it that it's a quote. In the original text up here, that he is a coward, right here, he is a coward. The he is not capitalized. It's not the beginning of the sentence in the original text. It's lowercase h, and it's lowercase h here. Another example would be, Zoe thought that he could turn the lock and these intruders would come in. Again, I'm picking up my quotation in the middle of a sentence right here, so that he is not capitalized. If the original text did not have this original phrase in another second, if this text started right here, capital letter H-E could turn the lock and these intruders would come in, I would probably use method number 2 instead. Zoe says, or Zoe thinks, comma, capital letter, he could turn the lock. But since in the original text it's a lowercase h there, I'm going to say Zoe thought that he could turn. And it flows in my sentence a little better. The last way is just to insert short phrases of a quotation into your sentence. For example, if I wanted to use this green part that I left out up here, if that was the important part rather than him standing at the door ready to twist it open, I could just include those phrases to show his emotion. As he stands at the door, Zoe has tears rolling down his face. I really just used the words of the quote to fill in my sentence, and I just put quotation marks around them wherever they come in the sentence, keeping the capitalization as it is in the original text. All right, those are the 4 different methods. Try and use them all.